franktalks.com. Need help with love, sex, dating, and relationships? Visit franktalks.com.
Relationships, sex, passion with Dr. Laurie Betito. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
Welcome to Passion, a show about love, sex, and relationships. Tonight on the program, a regular monthly feature we call Dating Dilemmas. I am joined by Frank Kermit. He is a dating coach of franktalks.com. He's the best-selling author of several books on the subject of dating and a specialist in adult male virgins, which he wrote a whole book on, probably one of the only books written about that, right?
That's right. One of my special branches to help out some special people.
Okay, we can call it that. Yes, and it happens to be Frank's 100th show, so that's really fun. It's a milestone that we get to celebrate together. Just time flies. Like, I can't believe it's been like 6 years since you've been doing it.
6 years, 100 appearances on
it's great.
Passion.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it. So we welcome Frank every month, and sometimes even more, to give his advice on dating and to answer questions from you. So you can send in the questions, and he also puts out a call on Facebook, so people have sent questions on Facebook, but you can send them in right now at 514-800 if you'd like to text them in. If you want to call in and have a discussion, or you have a particular situation you want to talk about, 514-990-0800. And really, we can talk questions about anything from where to date, how to date,
what to say, how to act, where to go, and everything in between, and whether or not you should approach a friend. What do you do if someone is not approaching you, and all that good stuff.
What do you tell? So can we start with your adult male virgin things?
Mm-hmm.
Because you were in Toronto before you came to Montreal, and that was you had a big following there. You led groups, right, for adult male virgins. Like, tell me a little bit about that. What makes them a special population?
All right, for adult male virgins, ranging anywhere from age 18, because that's the age of majority here in Canada, all the way to men in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s.
So you've had men in their 60s.
I've had men in their 60s who they will not go to a prostitute. They don't want to pay for sex. They don't just want to have sex. That's not the thing they're looking for. They want a girlfriend.
Well, that would be easy. Having sex, you pay for it. It would be easy to get. It's
exactly.
Not right. I get you.
They really just want a girlfriend. They want to be loved. Okay? They don't want sex. They want to make love. Here is the one quality they all share. They never made their love life a top priority.
That's not a quality. That would be their one fault, right?
Well, when I say quality, what I mean is, and I don't want to
call
it
a characteristic.
fault.
They're characteristic. It's not a fault. They're character, but except that characteristic has led them to a life where they might be lonely now, right?
Exactly. And it just gets worse and worse as they get older. The age of pain is 25. Because up until 25...
What do you mean the age of pain?
That's where the pain gets really bad. Between the age of 18 and 25.
Like heartache pain?
Heartache.
Okay.
Because, look, up until that point, you can always say, well, I was busy with school. I was starting my career. I just didn't have time. I wasn't ready. But once you're 25 years old and you're still an adult male virgin, that's when the stigma starts to hit.
Oh, that kind of pain. Okay, gotcha.
All right. And the longer you go, then you become a 30-year-old virgin. It becomes even more difficult. What are you supposed to do when you're on a date with somebody and it's leading to sex? Do you just tell the person you're dating, by the way, I've never done this before?
Well, that's right. How do you handle that?
And the answer is, you don't bring it up unless you have to.
Unless you're planning to go further.
No, not necessarily. You don't have to tell, the same way that you wouldn't necessarily have to tell anybody about your sexual history before having sex.
Okay.
You don't have to tell anybody about your lack of sexual history.
What if somebody asks you about your sexual history?
I don't talk about that until we know each other better. Because the fact is, you don't know how the person is going to react. The same way that somebody who's had over 100 sex partners is not obligated to share anything and has to be mindful of the fact that I don't know how this other person's going to react.
Okay, so Okay, but someone might think and say, well, I would want to know if the person I'm going to sleep with has had 100 partners because I'm not sure I want to be with somebody who's had 100 partners. If
you want that kind of information, then you have to make a certain level of commitment. Information is shared based on the level of commitment you're at.
That's a good point.
And if you're only dating for, let's say, 3-4 months, I personally don't believe that two people who have been dating 3 or 4 months deserve that kind of in-depth detail about each other. And
unless they've already made that commitment.
Right. But even then, it's a question of, in my philosophy, when you're engaged, you have to go through what I call a full disclosure. That's where anything you can think of that your partner may not marry you for, you have to share it at that point while you're engaged and you're working towards that commitment.
Okay, but then I'm thinking, all right, let's go do full disclosure. And you find out that, hey, by the way, when we had sex that first time, that was my first time. I would think that would be quite shocking maybe for the partner.
It is. Look, it could be shocking, but by that point, you've, let's say, dated the person, and I'll just throw a number out here, okay? From the first time you've started dating to the time you're engaged, let's assume you've had a year with the person, okay? And that's being very conservative. You've had a year to figure out whether or not your partner would be able to handle it or would hold it against you. Okay, and let's just take away the virgin stigma for a second. And we'll say it's somebody who's had sex with over 100 partners. You have a year to find out if your partner would be able to handle it. Because during that year, there's story topics you can bring up, conversation topics, stories in the media.
You can talk about someone else who's done it.
Exactly. Oh, what do you think of so-and-so? Because so-and-so's just admitted in the latest book that they've had this type of lifestyle. Test your partner. See if your partner can handle it or not.
Okay.
So there's ways to test your partner before you even get there. The same way that you shouldn't be proposing marriage to anybody if you're thinking, well, there's a chance the person might say no.
Right. You want to do it. Absolutely. Actually, that was in an article that I just read about some of the most successful characteristics of long-term couples, and it was only got engaged because they both knew. They both had discussions about getting married to each other way before that happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there really is no surprise. And the fact is, you don't want to necessarily reveal any particular secret about your past to someone you've only dated for, let's say, 6 months, 9 months, even a year. Because after that, after the two of you break up, any secret you may have shared with that person may not stay a secret. So you don't have to reveal everything. In fact, the rule is, once we reach a certain level of commitment, you'll get access to that information. Until then, you don't need to know.
You haven't earned it yet.
Exactly.
So somebody texts in, you lie. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know how to have sex. To know how to do it well is another story.
What does that mean?
I don't know what the lie came from, but
that people exist and they're virgins? It's not about not knowing what to do. It's about wanting a certain emotional tie to it that they haven't been able to achieve because they haven't made it a priority.
Right.
That's ridiculous.
No, I think what they're also implying is that you wouldn't. No, they're saying you lie. In other words, you don't tell the person that you're a virgin because it doesn't. It's not rocket science to have sex.
No, you don't lie, because the minute you lie about any one thing, it destroys your credibility if it turns into a long-term relationship.
Right. And then they'll think you lied about other important things.
Exactly. So don't lie. Just simply say, I won't talk about it. It's nobody's business.
I'm not ready to talk about my sexual history.
We're not at that level yet.
Okay. I think I much prefer that. I find that a much more honest way.
As soon as you make lying about the small stuff okay, you lose your credibility when the big stuff comes up.
So you don't lie, all right? You don't lie. 514-800 if you'd like to text in. We have a question coming up about long-distance relationships. Or you can call in with your questions at 514-790-0800. Frank Kermit in studio with me of franktalks.com. He's a dating coach and joins us every month here on the program. You're listening right here to Passion on CJAD 800.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, the podcast. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
We've got Frank Kermit in the house, which means dating issues, dating questions, dating dilemmas. 514-800 to text in, or 514-790-0800. Here's a text. Can long-distance relationships work? I'm in one right now, and I feel insecure about the future. My girlfriend cries on the phone often because she feels lonely, sad, etc. What do I do? What can I do to make this situation better? Get into the same darn city if you want to make it better.
Okay, if you're stuck in your situation in terms of being a long-distance relationship, the best thing you can do is to set a deadline when it's going to stop being a long-distance relationship.
It's so much easier when you know the pain ends.
Okay.
To handle pain and to handle that kind of loneliness is much easier when you know there is a time when all of this will be over and you will be together.
It's not the distance in a long-distance relationship. It's how long people anticipate having to go through with it. It's the uncertainty. Right. And that's the biggest threat, not just to long-distance relationship, to any relationship. You want to guarantee that the person you're seeing is going to consider other options. Be uncertain about what your future holds. Don't set any deadlines. Don't say, look, if we're together for a year, we're going to move on to the next level, whatever that next level is. Long distance relationship, okay, pick a date. On this day, if we're still in a relationship, on this day, we're going to start within 6 months of that, we're going to be living in the same city. And if you don't make that deadline, that's the sign that you need to move on.
Very important advice, and I'm total agreement with you. I mean, this is
one of the few times we agree, so this is good.
Yeah, one of the few times. That's not true. We agree.
95.
Listen, long-distance relationships are difficult. If they start long-distance, the chance of survival is not great. If they end up long distance because one of you is called to work, or you're in the army, or you've got to, you're exploring your options in another city or whatever, that's very different because you've already established that level of intimacy, and then you can find ways to make sure the communication keeps going, whatever. But if you've never been together physically...
Then it's not a long-distance relationship. At that point, it qualifies as an online relationship.
Yeah,
and you cannot consider those as legitimate until you meet face-to-face and you see if what you believe and everything you've put into that online relationship actually materializes in real life.
Right. And also, online relationships also prolong relationships that would have ended sooner. So, yes. In other words, if you are far away from each other, the relationship that has been ongoing for a year, long distance, had you been in the same city, might have ended within 2 months.
With that said, I want to put in one more thing. If you have a biological clock as a factor and you're in a long distance relationship, understand that, as Dr. Laurie just said, it prolongs a relationship that wouldn't have lasted. If you're fighting off a biological clock, you may have to keep your options open so you don't waste time with the wrong person.
That's true, too. Here's a text that says, I'm not ready to talk about it equals I'm not proud of my history. If you don't lie, then come clean and tell the truth. If they don't want to do it because you've never done it, maybe you shouldn't do it with them. See, I'm in agreement with that one.
I disagree. I think that is the worst possible answer. That's entitlement right there. Just because someone doesn't want to tell you, you automatically assume they're not proud of it. Has nothing to do with that. Have you thought that maybe you haven't earned that person's trust? That maybe you haven't presented yourself? So then
maybe the answer might be instead, I'm not sure you've earned that level of information.
Just, well, that's it.
But sometimes, making it specific, I don't think, we're not there yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
It has nothing to do with what I've done or haven't done. It's really about, you really haven't earned that. So why don't you earn that
this
trust?
Type of, just the fact that you would automatically assume, well, if you were proud of it, you would share it. No, they're being private about it because there are certain things that you don't have to share publicly with anybody who asks.
Right. Just because they ask doesn't mean you have to say.
Exactly.
We have G on the line. Hi.
Hi. Yeah. I was seeing a young woman for 9 months. I was living with her.
Okay. You already moved in after just 9 months, and you were together, already living together? Just asking.
From say November, and I moved in April.
Okay, so 4 months later you moved in. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, now I confided in her, told her about past relationships and so on and so forth.
Okay.
3 different women, 3 different children, and I only ever admitted to any anybody one child, which was my firstborn.
You only told them that you only had one kid when you actually had 3 kids?
No, but I told her to anybody else because I wasn't involved sexually with any other woman.
So this was the most serious. So you told her you've had 3 other women with 3 kids with 3 other women.
I confided in her with all my heart.
Okay, and
that was the decision to see whether or not it would be, it would be a lasting thing to carry on.
And
well, recently we just split up.
Okay.
But we are still talking, and
so what would be your question now?
It would always be brought up.
The past would always be brought up.
Yeah. Okay. And I have no involvement with any of these women.
Or their children, or your children?
The only one that I ever spoke to was my oldest one.
Okay.
And we had a falling out, and I didn't speak to him for a year and a half, even though I did see him.
All right. Gee, first of all, my heart goes out to you. I'm sorry about the breakup. I'm even more sorry that you're not in contact with your kids. With that said, I don't think being honest is what the problem was with your last partner. I think your last partner probably felt threatened in some way. And when you're talking about your exes and kids that you're not in contact with, did you ever specify that you wanted a certain resolution, certain deadline, something that you wanted to happen, that maybe she felt, wait a minute, if you're not even reaching out to your exes to contact your kids, how can I trust your commitment to me? I think there was a fear of abandonment there. That would be the emotional need that's striking out for me here.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but was not. She didn't have a good relationship with her own daughter and kids to start with.
This to me sounds very complicated, and it sounds like there's a lot of emotions on both sides and a lot of
a little too much drama, maybe.
Well, there's sounds like there's a lot of drama on both sides, to tell you the truth. This is not something we can just solve just like that, or even this is where
she wants me to come back.
Well, if I suggest strongly, if you're going to go back, you better go in for some counseling
couples
together.
Counseling.
Go in together for couples counseling, because I can tell you right now, those issues are going to keep resurfacing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
All right. Good luck, G. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. More dating dilemmas coming up next here on Passion on CJAD.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, the podcast. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
Dating dilemmas with Frank Kermit in studio. A texter at 514-800 says, unless I'm getting married, I do not reveal my age ever. I don't want to be categorized or judged, and I consider it one of those none of their business secrets. I don't know. I'd want to know the age of the person I'm dating.
It does depend, like you said, unless you're getting married. With that said, does your age prohibit something that the person you're going to marry is looking to do?
Let's be specific. In other words, if the person you're dating is younger than you and expects that they want children eventually, but you're of non-childbearing age, even though you look really good.
Or if it's a man who, let's say, is much older and he doesn't want any more children.
And you do.
Exactly. Now you've got a problem here. So let's not look at it as age. Let's look at it at, does the person that you're dating have a life plan where your age could be a factor in their life plan? And it could even be something like, if you're going to be retired and they want to continue working, they may not like that, because they want to do things with you, and maybe your age is related to your health. Mm-hmm. So at least what the person is saying here, there is a good element here. The person is saying, if I'm going to get married.
Right.
So if you're going to get engaged, my feeling is bring it up during the engagement phase. Don't wait.
Not till you're at the altar. By the way, I'm 20 years your junior. Mm-hmm. Or senior, whatever. Yeah. Right, exactly. Well, that would be... I can't really see that happening. I mean, I don't understand why people would hide their age. But the same way that I don't see how people hide their age online, like on
because
websites.
there are people who will say,
then I wouldn't want to be with those people.
there are people who say, I don't want to date anybody over age X. And then the person is 2 years older, and they'll go out for a while, and it turns out, oh, well, 2 years wasn't that big a deal, because people are never too clear about the difference between a boundary and a preference. When people make, and this happens a lot, people will say, this is my perimeter. And what they're saying is, well, it's actually my preference.
Right.
So that's why they say, I'm not going to talk about my age. Let's see if we connect first. Then I'll tell you my age. And you know what? Unfortunately, there's a lot of stigma out there. Age is one of them. I still wouldn't want to date someone who wouldn't want to date me at the age that I'm at. News is next, and then more dating dilemmas here on Passion on CJAD.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, the podcast. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
Dating dilemmas tonight on the program with Frank Kermit in studio, franktalks.com. And we have Leah on the line at 514-790-0800. Hi, Leah.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. I called a few months ago, I think with the same guest that you had about divorce, and listened to your show again, and the communications about how many partners that you have had just reminded me of one of the first fight I ever had with my partner.
Okay.
Which was exactly about this subject in particular. He was my first partner. He was my first basically everything.
Okay.
And I remember the first time our big fight was about the fact that he had lied about one of his partners, which I took very, very badly, because when we had discussed this, it was very open. I kind of felt maybe a little under, because I had no experience previous.
Okay, so you felt insecure.
Yeah, I felt a little insecure about the fact that I had no partners previously, and I guess feeding off of that, this my partner, who was also still friends with this person,
right,
decided to not tell me because of a previous partner that he had, who reacted very, very badly to that.
Okay.
So in the end, obviously, they didn't stay together, because we're together now, and we're going on our 5th anniversary in December, which is very exciting.
Okay, and have you let it go?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was like 4.5 years ago.
Okay.
But what actually upset me was not the fact that he had slept with his partner. It was really about the lying.
Yeah.
I think what's really important is, it is about a level of trust. I do believe that. But I think also as well, it's a view on your own sexuality. It's how comfortable you are with yourself and your body, and how, I don't want to say liberated, but confident you are. Yeah, confident with how many partners you've had. Like, so many people are very judgmental about the numbers and forget that every human has needs. And so it's not the numbers that counts, if this person was happy, if they had a good experience.
It's what they chose, right? And and if you don't want to be with someone who made those choices, that's your right.
I disagree with the person who had texted before saying, like, it's because you're uncomfortable, or you're ashamed of your past. I think for some people it's about that, but I really think more of it's a level of comfort with self and your personal sexuality, and a little bit about the comfort and trust that you would have to the other person. If you don't feel like you can trust to share that information, I feel like it's less about like sharing the partners and more about that you still feel uncomfortable with this person that you're interacting with, right? Right. So again, like, a big part of a relationship is trust and communication. So if you don't feel comfortable sharing that, then there's some issue with communication.
Well, or trust or something.
Yeah.
Plus,
absolutely.
there's privacy as well. For some people, it's just an issue of privacy. And I'm not going to violate the privacy of every person I've been with just because I was asked a question.
Right. Except that sometimes if you value a certain thing, like let's say you're a very open person and you like to be a certain way, and this is what you're looking for in a partner, and they're very private, it may not work as a relationship.
Well, then the issue wasn't sex. The issue was an incompatibility of values.
Oh, or communication of some sort. Like, like Leo was saying, it's not about the sex. It's about the communication. It's not about the partners. It's about the trust. It's different.
Because you don't want somebody who's going to judge you on the number of partners you
That's
have.
right. You don't.
You want somebody who's going to be able to say, okay, well, this is your past, and I'm with your present. I'm not with the people that you have.
And believe me, I've seen many couples break up over that, and partners become obsessive about the past of their partners when they hear about it.
But sometimes it's not necessarily about the number, it's about the values. Whereas one person says, I've only had sex in committed relationships. The other person says, well, I've had sex in relationships. I've also had one-night stands. I've had some casual sex between friends. And then the issue is not just the number, but wait a minute, our values are different. What's going to happen when it comes time to raise our kids and talk to our kids about what is acceptable sexual behavior?
But then at that point, it would be that you're way down the line, right? So if you were upset about the amount of partners you would have, it wouldn't get to the point where you'd have children. You'd probably break up way before.
We would hope.
And
you would hope that wouldn't be ongoing, right? Except that I have seen
obsession.
Right, it is a very unhealthy obsession, and I have seen that unhealthy obsession last years, years.
Well, I mean, I think it took me about 6-7 months to get over it because.
Okay, well, that's not years, so it's...
it's not years, but it's like going through the process of, well, I feel like it just happened yesterday because you lied about it, or I feel like I'm only finding out about it now, so it's very fresh. So this whole idea of, because it's a present issue... Right,
and it's long gone for them. For the person who it's been over for years, it's long gone, so they're not even thinking about it.
The other partner who's in it, they're not even thinking about it.
That's
because
right.
Either I kind of disagree with Frank in a way that I feel like it should be really casual when you tell somebody, it
shouldn't be a big deal.
This is the way I am. It's not a big deal. I'm comfortable with my sexuality, and I hope, as my partner, you will be comfortable with the actions that I've had.
You might feel differently. You might have felt differently if you had more than the one partner.
It's possible, but. Again, it was more about the lying than it was about the amount of partners. Because every other partner that he told me about, I've never had an issue with.
Right.
It's
so the lying.
One partner that was kind of secretive about it, and
well, it's the secrecy is the betrayal. It's not the actual thing.
It's not the actual, but the fact that it was about a sexual connection, which makes you think it can be emotional as well.
Right.
It becomes very complex. But the issue is really it's. You want somebody who's not going to judge you on the type
on that
you've had and the number of people you've had, because really, it's your body. It's not.
Thanks. You're absolutely right, Leah. Thank you for making some good points here tonight. Appreciate the call. Bye-bye. Texter says, I never asked my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, how many sexual partners she had. She felt a need to tell me anyway. And I have to admit, I was in awe/shock for about a week. But I got over it, and I've been with her for 15 years now. Do I wish she never told me? Not at all. It helped make her who she is today, a beautiful woman who is amazing in bed. I'd like to think I had a part in that, too.
Well, that's a good attitude to have.
That's a very positive attitude.
But imagine he didn't know. And after so many years of marriage, then he finds out.
Right.
That I've seen some people go through that, and it bothers them because they're wondering, why didn't you ever bring it up before?
Right. How come you didn't trust me enough to tell me? Why did you feel you had to hide that?
Let's also remember that as great as it is that we all want to find someone open-minded, there are people out there who judge. There are people out there who are not comfortable about it, and that's why you have to be careful about what private information you share, including your sexual history.
Yeah. Texter says, this lady's not over at the fact that she called you and was talking about it. If she's not over it, I can guarantee you that she will bring her incident up every time to the foot with her partner. Sometimes the texting autocorrect. I have no idea what it's trying to say here. But anyway, so the other person who wrote in saying they never say their age, I believe, I'm trying to see if it's the same person. I believe I'm a 40-year-old male looking for a 25 to 30-year-old female, hoping for my first child. So maybe he's not sharing his age, thinking that the 25-year-old is going to think he's also 25 years old.
Well,
is that possible?
Not that he's another 25-year-old, but let's say she has a certain parameter in mind, and she's thinking, oh, ideally I'd want to meet somebody who's 25, my age, to 35. Well, he's just above that at 40.
Right.
And he doesn't have a biological clock. If he wants to start a family, he has every prerogative to do it. And ideally, Should he mention his age and say, look, I'm 40 years old, but I want to have a family within the next 5 years. I want to get married, or at the very least, in the next 5 years, I want to be present at the birth of my first child. Look, if you're honest like that, will there be women who say, you know what, this guy knows what he wants, and I know that within 2 years, I want to have a baby too? You will attract that kind of partner. Will it happen that some women will say, sorry, you're 40, I'm not even going to go there because I have too many other options? Yes. So he's just trying to increase the pool. I just don't want to...
Wouldn't he be lying at that point?
Well, no. If he doesn't talk about it and he says, I will share my age if and when we get serious.
Really? I would say, you know what? I would walk. To me, that would be a flag that he's hiding something.
You know what? But we don't know what he's hiding. The same way
the fact is, I wouldn't want. Personally, I don't think I would want to be with somebody who I felt was hiding all kinds of stuff.
Should you tell somebody how much you make?
It depends. No, not until they've earned that. But.
Same deal. Same deal.
But the age, your age.
Yes, the age.
I don't know about that.
Because if you're dealing with a stigma, if you're dealing with prejudice, the bottom line is you don't have to share what's going to work against you until someone earns your trust.
All right, well, clearly the conversation is about what you share and when. So if you have some thoughts on that, send them along. More with Dating Dilemmas coming up next on Passion on CJAD.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, the podcast. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
Dating Dilemmas tonight on the program. We are talking about really the conversation just happened to go that way tonight about sharing. What information do we share? When do we share it? Especially in terms of numbers of partners. How did I forget what it... Oh, yes. It started with, do I share that you are my first sexual partner for adult male virgins? And there are plenty of adult female virgins too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
So someone says, I never said marriage. I'll tell her after sex, hopefully within a month. So I'm not sure which one that is referring to.
Why are you doing that?
What is he put us back to what this is referring to?
I'll lose my virginity to her, and then I'll tell her after a month.
Oh, I see.
And it's like, no, you don't do it just because it's been a month. You tell her because she needs to know.
At which point would she need to know that you're a virgin?
If the relationship is going to get very serious and you need to start sharing the past, you're going to start meeting family and friends and so on, you're thinking about building a future, having children, at that point, you better be ready to disclose everything. But just bringing it up, oh, by the way, last month when we did it, I was a virgin. That was my first time. Why? There's no reason to do it unless you're, maybe are feeling guilty about it, or you have it all pent up and you want to share it with somebody. All you're going to do is taint the moment for no good reason. If you share it, it has to be because the relationship has moved to a certain level of commitment. Otherwise, it's nobody's business.
Right. He says, no, I mean first child guy. Oh, the 40-year-old with the first child, is that it? I'm not even sure which one we said. Okay. Tell her what? See, I'm getting lost now with everything that we're getting here. 514-800 or 514-790-0800. So here, question. A guy I met a couple of years back got in contact with me out of the blue. He now lives in another province. We have been talking daily, and for hours we expressed a mutual fondness for each other. The issue, however, is distance. Oh, here's another long-distance one. I don't know why, but I always seem to end up in this situation. He is a few hours away by plane, and the entire situation is very frustrating. I really, really like him, but having dealt with long distance before, I'm weary, and it's almost painful talking to him and building this relationship that may not even take off. I'm caught between giving it a go and seeing where it takes us, just remaining friends or dwindling off contact so I don't get my heart broken. Would love advice. I say run. At this point, like if you don't have a plan, like we talked about, I don't understand what you're doing.
Okay, I'm looking at the repeating behavior pattern. You've been through this before.
Well, that says something about you.
Yeah.
Not that my psychologist side didn't come out yet. Okay. Just the dating part did. Okay.
It begins. No, the problem here is that she keeps getting into these situations and she's wondering, why do I get myself into these situations? Here's your perfect opportunity not to get into this situation. You both really like each other? Great. Neither one of you took the chance to make that happen when you lived in the same city.
Right. And also, the fact that this always happens to you, should be your own personal red flag. Like, you think it's just out of sheer luck that you end up only falling for guys long distance. That's not luck. There's a pattern here for a reason.
I'll tell her where she made her mistake. She spent hours talking to a guy that's not living in the same city, that she's never had a relationship with before.
That's an online relationship.
Okay, it's an online relationship. This is not long distance. This is online. You didn't establish anything previous. So no, you don't spend hours with somebody until they reach a certain level of commitment that you can't reach until the two of you actually get together for a week's vacation.
Except that that's not going to be the truth either, because a week's vacation, or, those are the problem with these long distance relationships, is every time you see each other, it's a small little mini honeymoon. You really don't get to see the person in their element. You don't get to see how they interact with their friends, their families, their work colleagues, whatever.
But it's a step up from what she would have now.
Yeah,
she shouldn't
it's a start, but...
Even as friends, they shouldn't have been spending that much time. You needed to spend that time trying to find someone to be in a relationship with in your current city.
Yeah.
Okay, you spent a lot of time in something, and then, how did this happen? Well, you kind of spent hours every day on it. You made it a priority. That's how it happened. You made it happen,
right? You made it happen. This is by choice. This doesn't just happen. These are choices that you make. Okay. Somebody says fantasy world, long distance. Yes, I have to agree with that. You can create a whole huge fantasy when somebody's not right here and when you don't get to see them in everyday interactions.
More often with online. But if we're talking about a relationship where you were dating for 6 months together.
And then you had to leave. Yeah, that's true too. That's true. The online thing is a fantasy though.
Yeah.
It really is, and a lot of people get very disappointed once they actually spend time in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, it's kind of like people who date for 7 or 8 years and then get married, and within 6 months they get divorced, because once they're living together, because they didn't live together previously, and they're in married life, and they think, it's going to be so different, and they have unrealistic expectations. Meanwhile, they've been dating for 6-7 years together. Why did it only last a few months? Why did it only last, even if it lasted a couple of years? If your marriage doesn't last longer than the time you spent dating, you may want to consider getting some coaching so that doesn't happen to you again.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Before we break, I want to just mention our big event tomorrow night called Stripped, which is, believe it or not, a naked fashion show for sexual health education. So it's taking place at Theatre St. James from 7 to 11 p.m. Open bar, dessert bar, music, entertainment, raffle prizes, all kinds of giveaways, and all of this to help raise funds to provide sex education for the youth, in our community. So if you're interested, and we have some fabulous sponsors too, and it's going to be a great event. Last year's was amazing. This year will be even better because there are like 50 models. They're not models, they're regular people from the age of 24 to 74, walking the runway, ordinary people. So if you're interested, just look it up online, shnq.ca, shnq.ca, and you can even look at last year's video, and it might inspire you to come and support sex education, right? You're listening to Dating Dilemmas tonight on Passion on CJAD 800.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, the podcast. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
Dating Dilemmas tonight on the program. Going into the home stretch with Frank Kermit. David says, great show, guys. Thank you very much. Another texter says, disagree on age. Be honest. Doesn't need to be in a vault. Another one says, I'm the 40-year-old guy looking for a younger girl for my first child. I never said marriage. I'll tell her after sex, hopefully within a month. So hopefully he's going to have sex within a month. We'll only share his age after he has sex with her.
I can understand that. At least he's telling her sooner than later. But then he also has to be mindful that some women won't have sex with him until they know. So he has to be prepared to let some people go. Okay. If that's what he's going to hold on to.
Here's a really good question also about disclosure. What is your take on timing revealing kinky interests, BDSM, latex, etc., to a significant others? I have found it to always be a gamble, and sometimes it does pan out when sometimes it doesn't. Consciously kinky.
I love this question. I love that you have an interest in being honest. about it, bravo.
And consciously. Kinky.
And consciously.
I like that too.
The answer is there's ways to test a person's sensitivities through humor, through conversation topics. Hey, did you hear about the thing? Hey, did you ever know about that club there? Read this thing on the internet. What do you think about it? You can even talk about 50 Shades of Grey. Mm-hmm. You can say, hey, I was listening to Dr. Laurie on Passion talking for 50 Shades of Passion, and they had this guest, this kinky couple. What do you think about that? Mm-hmm. See how they react. Sometimes it could be just something like, oh, I can't believe you did that. I'm going to have to give you a spanking.
Right.
And see how they react to that. Now, if the person says, oh, that's creeping me out. Well,
then you
okay.
get an idea that this is not going to...
Now, if you are a very open person and you simply just want to put it out there, and if they don't like it, they don't like it, then that's your prerogative. But in a world where there is stigma and sometimes it's just not safe to reveal elements about your sexual orientation, kinky or not, you may have to be a bit more calibrated. Use humor, use stories. You can always find out before you actually share the information.
Okay, that's a good point. So, and the same thing, by the way, the same advice goes with sharing fantasies. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people think, oh, I'll just share my fantasies. That's hot. No, it may not be hot for the other person to hear your fantasies.
You never know.
Right. They may be disturbed by your fantasies. They may start to become obsessed by your fantasies. I mean, there's many, many things that could happen.
You just have to understand that you can choose your actions, but not the consequences of those actions. You want to be you want to be an open book? Really, it is your prerogative. And it's a much easier way to live. You don't have to worry about it.
That's right.
But, oh boy, you don't always like what happens.
And we can end on that.
Yay.
Take the consequences. That's right.
100. It was 100. That was it. 100.
100th show with Frank Kermit here on Dating Dilemmas. Thank you all for your questions. Wonderful discussion tonight. Thank you very much for all of your texts and everybody who participated in this. Thanks to Dave Simon in Master Control. If you need to reach Frank, it's frank@franktalks.com. If you need to reach me, it's go to my website, drlaurie.com. Or you can email me here, passion@cjd.com. Next up on CJAD, you've got news followed by Joey Elias and The Comedy Show. Have a great rest of the night, and please remember, life is short, so do take the time to smell the flowers and indulge your passions.
Listen to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD and CJAD.com.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the Adult Male Virgin Seminars and Telephone Consultations. If you are an adult and want to get a handle on this once and for all, you need this seminar. Being an adult male virgin can be most stigmatizing in today's society. You feel like a failure in the eyes of the mass culture around you, alienated from your male friends who all talk about their sexual conquests, and you must hide this shameful secret lest they use it against you. And the very personal pain, anguish, and despair that cannot be described by words that haunts you every moment of your life. Enough is enough. It is time for male virgins to take charge of their sex lives. Frank gives you the rules of winning in this seminar. The Adult Male Virgin Seminars and Telephone Consultations. Make your first time the best time of her life. Only available at franktalks.com. Frank helps adult boys turn into men.
FrankTalks.com, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com, FrankTalks.com, Frank Talks, FrankTalks.com.